Well, good day to you. Welcome again into Strategies for Living here on 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, all the way down at the other side of the broadcast table. There she is, smiling like a Chessy cat. PLPC Carla McCormick.
It is I. Happy
Yes.
Monday, Dave.
Happy Monday to you, Carla. And it is so good we get back and we get to see our friend Ruben.
I know.
Rapid Ruben, right? I heard on the morning program you were a busy guy this morning.
It was pretty busy.
Yeah. But in the evening, we hopefully we give you a little less chaos in your life.
You know what? It is a little more laid back.
Yeah.
I have to admit.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're going to talk about this evening is a bit of chaos. Maybe we'll how do you wrap your? Have either one of you ever encountered something and you just can't understand it? You can't wrap your minds around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It happens all the time.
Think about this. According to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, in 2016, about 20.1 million Americans, 12 or older, had a substance use disorder. About 21 million had an opioid use disorder. The biggest group with about 15.1 million reporting for alcohol use disorder. Now, how do you wrap, if you're a family member, if you are in relationship to someone who has the chaos, real chaos in their life, how do you wrap your mind around it? We're going to talk about that this evening with Ellen Van Vechten. She is the author of a brand new book. We're going to talk about it this evening, On the Other Side of Chaos, Understanding the Addiction of a Loved One. That's this evening here on Strategies. Folks, thank you for tuning in. We are presented by CADA, the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse of Northwest Louisiana. Been helping individuals and families now for 60 years. We're also brought to you by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Jacob's Well, Inspirational Books and Gifts, and by Learning RX and Resilient House. Be right back to meet Ellen Van Vechten, author of On the Other Side of Chaos. Welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living on 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL, PLPC. Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Let's welcome to the program now Ellen Van Vechten, who practiced law for over 30 years and experienced the crisis of addiction in her own family. She obtained a Master of Social Work from Loyola University of Chicago with an emphasis in alcohol and drug counseling. She completed her internship at the Addiction Counseling and Education Services Program of Catholic Charities in the city of Chicago. She's a certified alcohol and drug counselor in the state of Illinois. 2010, Mrs. Van Vechten won the first award for excellence in writing from the Department of Social Work of Loyola University. And we welcome Ellen Van Vechten to Strategies for Living. Ms. Van Vechten, welcome.
Well, hello. Thank you very much for having me on the show and bringing attention to this important issue.
I think this is probably one of the issues we talk, Ellen, about it over and over and over because it is so important.
Yes.
I was very, very interested in, you probably heard us talking about that word that you chose to put into the title, the word chaos. And
yes.
Yeah.
The chaos spreads.
That it's an apt word. It's an apt description, both for the person addicted, but also very much for the family, people who love that person who is addicted, right?
Oh, absolutely, and can understand what happened.
So why'd you decide this was a book that needed to be written on the other side of chaos?
Well, as I worked through the issues with my son's addiction, I saw other families in crisis and participated in some of the training sessions for families. And I was just struck by what a great need there was for services for the family members and assistance to help them get through. So I decided to go back to school and study addiction. And I found that as the more I learned, the better able I was to cope with my own situation. I could bring more knowledge to bear on the problem. And so after a number of years, I thought, what can I do? I went back to school to try and serve the families of those facing this crisis. What can I do to bring the message to them? And thought that I would try and get it down on paper to share what I've learned and some of the tips and strategies that have worked for me.
One of the things that you don't shy away from in the book, too, is this is a disease. We refer to it as an addictive disease that, of course, the individual struggles with, the addicted individual and the family, but that's one of the things that we have to deal with, this idea of, well, this is a disease. You mean you just can't stop? It's a behavior. Why can't you just stop your drinking or your drugging or your gambling? Sure, we've all three of us have heard that a time or two.
Yes. I think that understanding that changes in the brain condition the brain to induce cravings, and the cycle just continues, but without free choice. And I think understanding that is kind of gives those of us who love someone that's struggling a reminder that it is a disease and it's not something that we caused, and that knowledge can give you a little relief that it's not, that we're not the cause of the disease.
Yeah. And again, we underscore the book. You're basing it on the science of addiction. Key word here is science. What makes it scientific information, Ellen?
Well, there's various studies of the brain that will show changes in the brain as a result of a pattern of drug use over time. I mean, we know there's physical symptoms as well. We know that there's withdrawal and development of tolerance, where the brain needs, the body needs more and more of the substance to achieve the same result. So these are physical findings and scientific imaging. It's a clear evidence-based analysis, but that it's not just a matter of weakness. It is a biological disease process.
Ellen, why do you think it is that families and even physicians and I guess, the public in general have such a hard time with accepting that it is a disease? No one argues whether diabetes is a disease or not.
Or heart disease.
Well, but I always pick on diabetes because a lot of diabetes has to do with habits, and why don't you just quit eating, and why are you overweight?
Why don't you cut back on that sugar?
Yeah, and people aren't judged and belittled, even with heart disease, the way they are with addiction. Why is that? Why has that been such a hurdle in the addiction arena?
Well, I think that it's been, long rooted in the past, but I think as more of the science comes out, as it becomes better known, we've got more information than we had back in the 50s, and certainly it's so prevalent that we're talking about it more, we're seeing it more. Many people are experiencing it, and there's a greater awareness and perhaps a striving to understand what's happening.
One of the things that I like that you do in the book is that you take the concepts, some of the theoretical concepts, and the science, and you make it understandable. You make it down to earth, for all of us to be able to understand. So, good job in that.
Thank you very much. That's what I was trying to do. That I'm learning these things in class and in the clinics, and realizing that I didn't have that information when I was a parent. So I'm trying to get knowledge in the hands of those struggling with it, so that it empowers them.
You talk about the difference between letting go and giving up. Is that important information? Is that maybe, I don't know if there's the most important piece of information that a family member might hear? We may have some family members this evening that are listening to this program and relating to us. Is that a most important thing, Ellen, learning the difference between letting go and giving up, and what is that difference?
I think so. I think so very, very strongly. I think that, in our support groups, there are slogans that tell you to let go and let God, and, to stop trying to control your loved one. And those are certainly good messages. But when someone we were talking about those diseases that may be somewhat behavioral related, the diabetes, the heart disease, when someone has a disease of that nature, their loved ones try and help them, find them some treatment, be proactive, try and support their recovery from the illness. And no one says that they're enabling the diabetes, or that they should just let go and let the individual take care of themselves. I think it's kind of a delicate line. We don't want to. Some people may say, I can't control it, I'm powerless over another's use of drugs or alcohol, but that doesn't mean you have to throw up your hands because you're powerless. If you accept that you really don't have control over the outcome, just like we can't control whether a cancer cure will work, we can't control whether a medication will solve another illness. We can't control whether the treatment will be effective, but we can do our best to try and actively support someone who needs to get treatment, to help them find that treatment and encourage them to enroll in treatment. So I don't think it's a passive process, but I think you do have to accept that you're not in control, but that if you get as much knowledge as you can, and try and find the best solution for you at that particular time, then that's something you can be active about, trying to battle this disease.
And that's not giving up. That's not
Right.
giving up at all.
Right.
It's detaching. It's stepping
yeah.
back.
You're detached from the result.
Right.
You know you can't control the result, but you're going to do your best to try and find some help for this person. But it does ring on that acceptance portion, but you can bring it all together and do the best you can. Sometimes you don't have choices or options, but sometimes your cards you can't play. You have no more cards left to play, but you can wait and see if the situation changes.
Yeah, and sometimes you're faced with a real interesting situation and kind of a no-win, making a choice between horrible and terrible sometimes.
Yes, absolutely.
On the other side of chaos, that's the name of Ellen Van Vechten's new book out from Central Recovery Press. Carla McCormick, David McMillan will be back with more with Ellen Van Vechten, our life strategist this evening, here on Strategies for Living. Stay with us. back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, PLPC Carla McCormick, and our life strategist, the author of On the Other Side of Chaos, Understanding the Addiction of a Loved One. You can find the book at your favorite bookseller, wherever you buy books, out from Central Recovery Press.
Ellen, I mean, we touched on it a little bit about, not giving up. Basically, you're talking about having good boundaries. How do you get a family to see that the addict, whether it's a kid or a wife or a husband, is basically making the whole family sick? And that it's not just about getting the addict into treatment and getting them clean, it's about healing the family.
Well, it's a multifaceted process, and I think that I suggest participation in a family recovery group. There's Families Anonymous. There's also Al-Anon. There's some other family groups that support the loved ones of those with the disease. It gives a family member a place to go where they'll be understood and they can talk and under the protection of confidentiality and get some support. There are other ways to find support. Some people find support through their church or some community groups or a supportive network of friends. So it's perhaps about having the family realize how destructive the disease has been to their own well-being, the fear and the stress and the anger and guilt are issues that the family will need to look inward and find their own serenity and find their own way to keep putting one foot in front of another and move forward with their own lives. And it's a very similar process to find a recovery plan for yourself to kind of get you back in the game of life, and to live life fully.
So it's not just about sending the loved one off to a 28-day treatment plan and they come home and everybody's well. It's engaging the family in a whole recovery plan.
Yes, absolutely. And a 28-day program, very often an individual will need follow-up treatment, or there might be a ongoing outpatient treatment, or the person in recovery from addictive disease will have their own recovery plan, how they're going to manage their work, their health, their relationships and work or schooling. And the family, too, will need to take steps to get themselves back on track. And that's a dicey time when someone comes back from treatment after 28 days. That's very early in their recovery, and it's an ongoing journey for everyone.
Now, one of the things that we talked about at the beginning of the show are the sheer numbers. I mean, those are staggering when you stop and think about 2016 numbers here, so they're fairly current. 20.1 million Americans 12 and older had a substance use disorder. About 2.1 million had an opioid use disorder. The big group, 15.1 million, alcohol use disorder. But you talk a lot about the other. You give a detailed outline of a lot of different types of addiction in the book. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I thought that it would provide a resource to family members. Someone whose loved one is experiencing a problem with alcohol, for example, may want to zero in on the discussion of that drug. And someone who has the pain of a loved one suffering from an opioid use disorder, it would benefit them to understand how opioids fit in with other depressant drugs, that they're in the same class, to understand the special treatment for opioid use disorder with some of the medication-assisted therapies that are available. So I wanted to develop a resource that someone could could easily find the information that they were concerned about, the drugs they were concerned about, and to get a better understanding of the different classes of drugs so they can understand where their loved one's drug of choice fits into the larger subset.
So, in other words, the more you know your enemy. I mean, I'm kind of as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking the thought that came into my mind. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. So we need to know them, don't we?
We do, and I think I had a little quote for each section of the book, and because I've got 3 sections, I have knowledge, and then acceptance, and finally informed action. And the quote for knowledge is an old philosopher, John Locke, but he said the only fence against the world is a thorough knowledge of it. And that's what I'm trying to give people information so they can move forward. We talk about the impact of trauma on as a factor that may lead someone to start using drugs and developing an addiction, and to understand that if a loved one has suffered a trauma of some sort, that may be something that is contributing to their situation with drug use. It's important to know that so you can find the right kind of care for that person, so that you can find treatment in a trauma-informed setting. So that's where I think that knowledge can really support you in finding your way through this baffling situation.
So, Ellen, you kind of tackled the whole marijuana issue. That I work in addiction, and so I hear this a lot, and I saw this in the book. It's just pot, and I'm going to move to Colorado where it's legal, and blah, blah.
And it's becoming legal in more, and even in here in Louisiana, we've rolled out medicinal use of it.
So
how do you tackle that issue?
Well, and that's a difficult issue. There are a lot of people that have strong feelings about it for various reasons. And so I try to focus on the fact that it's our teenagers that are really at risk from a chronic use of the drugs. And it's common among high schoolers. I think somewhere between 6 and 14% of 12th graders have said that at some point or other during their high school careers they have smoked marijuana on a daily basis, and their brains aren't fully formed yet, and the drug interferes with that process. So it is impacting their academic performance, because even after the high has passed, there's a residual lack of attention, lack of focus, and it diminishes their learning ability. So I think I agree with the American Pediatrics Academy that opposes legalization because of the concern about the detrimental effect on adolescents. The fear being that the more it's accepted, the more available it is, the more likely it is to be used by even the most vulnerable.
And yet, we see very well where we're going, and is it stoppable now? No matter who comes out, what group comes out, is the way that we're going reversible? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And yet, it's good information to have, just to understand that it does pose a risk to our youth.
Just because it's legal doesn't mean that it can't still be risky or harmful behavior for our kids. Kids. I mean, we're talking about under 21 people,
young brains,
whose brains are not fully developed.
Right.
Yes.
So again, knowledge is power.
Always.
We can't. I mean, then alcohol is, of course, not legal for young people to drink either. But they're using it. So we won't be able to stop it, but just to know that it's not as simple as it seems, that it is presenting health risks.
The 12-step model of recovery, and you talk in the book about, again, the science, the theories of treatment, and of course, if you're going to talk about theories of treatment, you have to look at the 12-step model. You have to look at the 12 steps. Are the 12 steps as important today as they were in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s?
I think they are. I think that they've helped millions of people recover from addictive disease, and they're helping family members find peace and serenity despite the continued disruption of addiction in the family. I think we have more tools now, and I think that the profession is recognizing that, you know, there are many different paths to wellness, and that you know, the more tools you have, the better it is. So some people may embrace 12-step recovery. Some people may prefer to go a different route. They may have private counseling. They may counsel a clergy member. There are different ways, and can try more things, see what works for you, and build an individual recovery plan.
You touched on trauma earlier. It's interesting because we're going to have, you may have heard, one of our sponsors is the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse here of Northwest Louisiana. In fact, they're our title sponsor. They're going to be guests tomorrow evening. They've got an upcoming program, we'll talk about it tomorrow night, addressing trauma and the effects of trauma in addiction. How prevalent is that? How important is it that we understand trauma, Ellen, and its effects?
Well, it has been shown that studies have shown that there is a significant correlation between the experience of trauma and the later development of a substance use disorder. I think that some studies of individuals seeking treatment, between 42 and 95%, have reported past experiences involving trauma. There's an extremely high correlation between neglect or abuse as a child, sexual assault or abuse, or partner violence with the later onset of addictive disease. Women in particular, very high percentage of women, about 80%, report that they have a history of sexual assault, abuse, or partner violence when they're being interviewed in connection with services for substance abuse disorder. And it has many different forms. Of course, we know our veterans have experienced, a large number of veterans have issues with substance use disorders. So that trauma can be combat experience. It can also, as I said, be domestic abuse.
Right.
It can be something as simple as having been exposed to gun violence or having been a victim of a crime, that all these various traumatic events can just cause such disruption in the person's health and perhaps desire to escape recurring thoughts or lack of self-esteem, things that may contribute to them turning to drugs, including alcohol, to block out the pain.
The book is On the Other Side of Chaos and Understanding the Addiction of a Loved One at your favorite bookseller, out from Central Recovery Press. Ellen Van Vechten is our life strategist this evening on Strategies for Living and the author of this wonderful book. We'll be back to continue our conversation with Ellen Van Vechten here on Strategies.
And finally find my old blue jean.
You know, there are a lot of places that you can buy insurance, but there's only one, Jerry Anderson State Farm. Now, Jerry's here to help us manage the risk of everyday life, recover from the unexpected, and manage dreams. Jerry Anderson is at 4324 Parkway Drive in Bossier City. Auto insurance, home insurance, property, business insurance, life insurance. Call Jerry Anderson, 746-1209. Or you can go to jerryanderson.com. I think you'll see doing business with Jerry makes a difference. Jerry is your neighbor. 746-1209, 4324 Parkway Drive in Bossier City. No matter where you are in life, Jerry Anderson, State Farm, is here to help. 4324 Park.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the year.
Welcome back into Strategies for a Living here on 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan with the author of On the Other Side of Chaos, Understanding the Addiction of a Loved One, at your favorite bookseller right now, and out from Central Recovery Press. Just a total, I mean, the information that you've packed in here. Ellen, you mentioned the three parts, part one being knowledge, part two being acceptance, part three being informed action. And so you've really, from understanding addiction and treatment and recovery to the impact that someone else's disease has on you and your own need for recovery, to pulling it all together. How do we get her help? How do we get him help? I guess that's what I would put forth to you. Is there we want the magic. is there a magic way?
We do want what we hope for is wellness. I think that a lot depends on whether your loved one is a minor or is an adult. Because if it's you're a minor child, you have the right to place your child in care. If you have an adult qualifier, then they need to be on board, and that can be a very difficult problem. Sometimes circumstances will encourage someone to obtain treatment. Sometimes the court will order it. Those sometimes circumstances can be used to they change the situation.
Right.
There's some advice that I know has been provided on how to try and facilitate an adult loved one who needs some treatment. You can talk to them. You can express your concerns. That might be a non-starter very often. You can educate yourself about a program so that when they have a bad moment, when they're cycling in and out of use and despair, you may have an opening. And if you have already researched a program that's going to be a good fit for your loved one, then you're ready to act. You can also, just set a boundary that if either you're going to stop, seek help by yourself, or you're going to have to leave. So you can try and use whatever tools you have to try and have them go in and have a conversation with their physician, to go see a counselor, to have an assessment. That's the evaluation to see if someone has a problem that needs treatment and how intense the treatment should be. So again, I suggest that the more you know, the better able you are to try and get that conversation started. Try to leverage your circumstances to encourage and facilitate treatment, and be patient and wait for a time when the person will agree to have that conversation.
Ellen, the saddest thing to me are the parents who have just accepted it, who continue to give money, continue to support, continue to turn a blind eye. Because
they've given up, you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And they feel like if we don't do this, pay for this apartment, whatever, then they'll be on the streets, and then they'll die, and then it'll be my fault.
Right.
So I know that I read a little bit. I didn't get the opportunity to read your book before tonight. But I know you had a son, or you have a son who was, struggling with addiction. So how did you prevent yourself from getting to that point of where you just, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. We'll just support you, and this is just our new life.
Well, it was a long journey,
Yeah.
and I think it's hard too when someone is in recovery and is trying, but they don't have the means to support themselves. That's a really tough one, because they need basics to work on their recovery. They need a roof over their head and food and basic shelter so they can work on their recovery. It gets very tricky then on providing money, and when are you helping and when are you enabling?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about that a lot, and I talk about ways to perhaps assume that there's an accountability factor, that there are, kind of an agreement to, I'm going to look for a job, I'm going to go to school, and there's a long-term plan to kind of break away from the financial support. And I think it is very challenging to know when you're enabling instead of helping. But and I think that the supportive community can help parents do that as well, that they'll be with other people experiencing the same type of stress, the same situation. So if you go to a meeting of Al-Anon or Families Anonymous, you'll maybe hear some tips and strategies from other people on how they're dealing with it. But if those families think about it, they're contributing to a situation where their loved one is using drugs and putting their life at risk. They're not helping by facilitating the continued lifestyle. so that if they look at the big picture, they realize that they can't go on supporting it anymore.
I'm wondering if you wrote the book that you wished you had when you were going down this
That's
road.
really good, David.
Yes, I think so, because it was all my knowledge was kind of hard won.
Yeah.
And I certainly made a lot of mistakes. I could have handled things a lot better. But
Well, I don't know about that, but I think that what you've packed into this book, Ellen. I mean, I hope that we're doing justice. I mean, you've really packed. I've been doing this a while, Carla. I'd like to know you. I don't think I've ever seen this much in one place
Well,
for a family.
I'm sitting here thinking I need to have 5 or 6 of these on my shelves.
Yeah,
It's a great reference book.
It is. You've really covered the basis, Ellen. And I love, like I said, I know I'm repeating myself, but the part 1 knowledge, part 2 acceptance, part 3 informed action, including and taking us down to we're walking on eggshells here, and how do we really do this? I just think that's you've really hit a home run here, and so thank you for that.
Wonderful to hear. Thank you so much.
We're coming back to wrap up our conversation with Ellen Van Vechten today. The book is On the Other Side of Chaos: Understanding the Addiction of a Loved One, out from Central Recovery Press, wherever you buy books. Be right back.
If you or someone you love is struggling to pay attention, Learning RX wants you to know there is an alternative.
It is so frustrating. Every night, Joshua has such a hard time reading and doing homework. He just can't pay attention long enough to get anything done.
Low attention span might be caused by weak cognitive skills, the same skills our brain uses to think, learn, pay attention, and perform.
I go to business meetings and realize I just can't pay attention. I feel like I've been hiding my problem for years.
At Learning RX, clients complete intense but fun mental exercises to target and train weak cognitive skills. We've helped over 95,000 students of every age learn easier, think faster, and perform better. Take a cognitive skills assessment and discover the root cause of your struggles with attention.
Learning RX. Call 797-8523 today for Learning RX in Shreveport, Bossier City. 797-8523. Where you go for Welcome back. Welcome back into 101.7 FM, 710 KEEL. Welcome back into this edition of Strategies for Living. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan, our life strategist today, the author of an excellent book, On the Other Side of Chaos, Understanding the Addiction of a Loved One. She is Ellen Van Vechten. Carla, Ellen, you know, family members asking you, are we ever going to be okay again? Are we ever going to, are we ever going to be happy again?
I've always believed there's hope. I know people who have been to treatment 7 times that eventually get sober. So yes, I will say never, ever, ever, ever give up.
You want to wade in there, Ellen?
Oh, I would agree as well that there's always hope. And for family members, we have hope that whatever happens to our loved one, that we'll be okay. We'll keep going, and we will find serenity.
This is a unique book. It addresses recovery. It gives you a tremendous amount of knowledge about the treatment that's available out there. The information's there, the theory's there. It's totally readable. I don't want people to get the idea that this is not a feel-good book. This is probably not a book that you read every night, unless you have to. But when you do have to, wow, to have all of this reference in one place is so important, Ellen. And thank you for doing it.
Great job, Ellen. Great book.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And the book is going to be released on the 25th. So it's coming up next week.
So just around the corner. And if you'll go to Central Recovery Press, you can pre-order it right now. I think you can probably pre-order it wherever you buy books. And folks, it is worth, if addiction is touching your family, and the numbers say that there's a lot of people listening to us right now who are touched by addiction, then On the Other Side of Chaos is an important book for you, out from Central Recovery Press. Ellen, thank you so much for being a great life strategist.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to have been part of this conversation.
Carla,
thank you so much.
You bet. Carla, you've done it again.
Ellen's done it. Thank you, Ellen.
And Ruben, you've done it again.
Yes, indeed I have.
Folks, thank you. You've done it again especially. Thank you for tuning in to Strategies. We've been brought to you by CADA, the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse of Northwest Louisiana. Also by Jerry Anderson, State Farm Insurance. By Learning RX. By Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center. By Jacob's Well Inspirational Books and Gifts. And by Resilient House. If today were the last day of your life, you only had one more phone call to make, who would you call? What would you say? And why are you waiting? Make the call. For Ellen Van Vechten, for PLPC Carla McCormick, for Ruben Wright, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. See you next time here on Strategies for Living.
Breaking news and trending talk. This is 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. KEEL, Shreveport.
And Dr. Ford, we're told Judge Kavanaugh not only denies this happened, but denies he was even at the party where it allegedly happened.